In music, there's an idea called a noodle. It's this little crispy thing that you can add to, the greater composure in general. That's just a little something extra. What it does is it draws your listener into the greater composition because a composition is kind of like a math formula, right? There's an ebb and a flow to everything. There are repeating parts. Your web pages are the same way. And in much the same way that in Web 101, we looked at a couple of noodles. We had things like borders. We had things like asides. We had things like, if you think about the chapter 11, image gallery, right? We had things like fade in and fade out times for our images. All of those are noodles, a little something extra that complements the greater ebb and flow of your web page so that it is like a surprise and a delight to your reader, just like noodles, guitar noodles or drum noodles are a surprise and a delight to a listener. So here with Bootstrap, what we want to do is essentially add those little surprises and delights and make those so that we compress those into some of the smaller scale interactions that you are going to have with your unknown potential future clients. Now, some of these we're going to find in the 5 and 6 chapters here in the LinkedIn Learning training. So of all of the interactions that you have with your user, we have been primarily focused on layout and design. Those big picture items that guide your user all over your page. But really, we don't need massive fence posts all the time. A lot of the time, you as a web designer are going to focus or have your user focus on some of these smaller elements. Some of those smaller elements that really do make a difference are things like creating buttons. So buttons aren't just good for things like submitting forms. You can use buttons to expand and contract content. You can use buttons to navigate through your pages. And all of those things are little ways for your user to demonstrate interaction on your pages. And again, just like we talked in the previous video about Web 2.0, helping draw your user into your web content by giving them a semblance of interactivity. If we can do that with a button without having to burden our server-side interactions with things, Bing, that's fantastic. Button groups are another area rather that you are going to see. And the one I really wanted to focus here on is the idea of, and I believe this is, and it's in the chapter 6 of the training, is a basic card and a card layout. You are familiar with cards on the web because really we have come to rely on those as a neat little grouping of content. So we would think of a card like having a background and then an image as the next layer towards you as part of that. So that image would be, a generic male avatar, and in front of that it would say, click here to browse our selection of male clothing, I suppose, right? So a next card we would have is the same deal, right? We would have a solid colored background. We would have a plain female avatar. And in front of that, we would have click here for our women's clothing items. And we would go forward from there. Those little cards are really fantastic ways to instead of expand what your user is looking at, it's actually the opposite. It's to contract what the user is looking at. And they can make a selection from a small grouping of small, single tailored items that have meaning for the content. Those cards, actually, you will see as part of HTML and JavaScript caches that come along with, and I don't mean cache like CACHE, like in web design. I actually mean like a bundle of things that go together. If you think about things like emails, where you would be able to click on those things, if you think about things like single serving pages, some of the things that we're actually going to be able to produce in the next content portion after this, when we get PHP and when we get databases for web design, you're going to see how some of those things go along. And those are really fantastic ways to be able to give small groupings of content to a user in a dynamic way, where we take away all of the extra stuff that's happening. We remove all of the information that our users would ordinarily have to wade through, and we present them with small, purposeful items that look as though they can select something that is tailored to them. So in contracting the web in such a way that it aims directly at the user, you are again doing some of the big heavy lifting for why we're doing web design in the first place. We are bringing content specifically tailored to a user, specifically tailored to their device, using, in this case, adaptive. Remember, it's not responsive web design. Responsive web design is media query based, desktop, tablet, smartphone. This is adaptive web design with those hard-coded anchors, essentially, for screen sizes, 1029, 865, whatever they all happen to be. You can pick at those. So these are the things to look at here in the portion 2 of the training. Really, that is in chapters 5 and 6, and then 7 and 8 go big. I just started with big because it's America. We like to do that.